morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Chris Heuer, and I am very excited to bring back CXD Now for Season 2 here in 2016. That is Customer Experience Design Now. And that's very important because I really see this as the discipline for the next decade. We've been talking about it for a long time, but we finally have the understanding, the tools, and the means to be able to do it in a way that actually is a little bit easier, still requires work, so don't think it's going to be simple, but that enables to actually deliver on the vision of delivering a better, holistic, and integrated experience for our customers. So today I'm joined by my co-host, Dave Gray. How are you, Dave? Very nice to see you again.
Great to see you too.
And we also have as our guest today, Marshall Kirkpatrick of Littleburg. Hi, Marshall.
Hey, Chris. Hi, Dave. Thanks so much for inviting me to join you. I'm really excited about it.
Likewise. And as you know, I've been a big fan of what you've been doing for a while. To set the stage for other people who aren't familiar with Littlebird yet, Littlebird does one of the most important things in my view if you are engaged in social media, if you are working in influencer marketing, or if you're trying to engage your market online. And that's to help you identify where are the nodes, where are the true influencers inside of networks, and where are those conversations that matter. When I first started off with my first social media agency back in 2006, I would literally crawl hundreds and hundreds of bloggers of websites just to try to find the 5 people that I really needed to talk to. And I remember the first one I did, which was a personal passion, thankfully for me, was in the wine industry. So trying to find people other than Gary Vee, who was actually influential about wine, took quite a bit of time. And we literally hand-graded their sites. We determined how active were they in the conversation, how connected they were, trying to map these things out, and it took forever. And now with Littlebird, you can literally enter the key phrase that you're going after for your market, find the network of influencers behind it, and actually start finding ways to engage with them. It's really, really amazing. And one of the best things I like about what you do, Marshall, is the fact that I get this email every day from you that gives me one thing to do to further my advancement in engaging with that market. Well, actually 2. 1 person to follow and 1 of 3 conversations I might actually retweet, share, or reply to. So you've really been thinking about customer experience from the beginning. And I wonder if we could just start from there in terms of that experience that I just described and kind of the pain that I went through, as well as how you've approached it to make it so simple.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've been right there with you, Chris, doing that same kind of research for myself or for consulting clients or when working as a journalist, as I did for many years. And I enjoyed doing a lot of that digging and discovering new people and their blogs and kind of learning the structure of the social web and how it works. But at a certain point, it just becomes time and cost prohibitive to be sinking the kind of time into mapping out a community that it takes if you're going to do it by hand. And so people all around the world are looking now for an automated way to do that mapping, to do that discovery of people and communities and content and connections. And so what we are doing here at Littlebird is we're building on the years of experience that I've had, that the other people in the company have had, and that our customers have had in doing the research manually. And now we're doing it better and faster and at scale so that our customers and users can, like you said, figure out who they need to know and what conversations are most important. Not just so that they can go out and build social capital. That's one side of the coin, to make connections that will lead to people talking about you. But the other side of the coin that I think your audience may be especially interested in, that I'm personally especially interested in, is leveraging influencers, not just for what they will tell the world about you, but for what they will tell you about the world. Tracking those thought leaders as a learning channel and an early mover's advantage in optimizing your engagement with your market in marketing and in product.
That's fantastic. For those of you who may remember Dave from the interview I did with him, what was that, November, I guess, early November, Dave? Mm-hmm. He's got a terrific backstory here in how he came into visual communications. I'll encourage you to go look at that video. In fact, you can see that on cxdnow.com if you're interested in more of his background. But Dave, you had a particular interest in bringing Marshall on, and I was wondering if you could go ahead and kick that off and kind of explain what your interest level was in talking to Marshall about this.
Yeah, I actually bumped into Marshall, I guess last year sometime, and had bumped into Little Bird before that, sort of serendipitously. You were doing some, I don't know if they were white papers, Marshall, or you were doing some kind of publishing or research and publishing of, thought leaders or, people who are influential in various fields. And I showed up on one of your lists and someone forwarded to me, and I was like, "Oh, that's nice. I'm an influencer." And but I so that put Little Bird on my radar, and I was curious. And then when we met, and you sort of took me under the hood and sort of showed me the product, I found it incredibly fascinating, because this is what companies are doing. Companies are trying to become more customer centric. And they don't know where. It's not easy for a company or an organization to figure out where all those conversations are happening that are about them or have impact on them. It's not like they happen in the lobby. It's not like, you have all these things where, people often don't call customer support anymore. They just bitch on Twitter, or they go onto a forum somewhere. And I think what's fascinating to me about Little Bird is you were doing this analysis about, where are the conversations happening, and where are they happening in such a way that they are being, amplified, and also in a given field, I remember sitting or looking over your shoulder, and you're just showing me this stuff. And drilling down to not only the people who are influential on a topic, but the people who are influential, who are the influencers of the influencers on the topic, who are often not very, they might not have thousands of followers, but they're the people that the experts who do have thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers are listening to. So the people who are the influencers of the influencers, if you will. And I just was fascinated at your, well, actually, I was almost more fascinated by the way that your mind works. But what you've been able to do is to take the thinking that the way that you look at these networks. And I don't think Chris mentioned you're one of the top bloggers in the world in terms of influence yourself. So what you were able to do that got you there, you are now making available to marketers and other professionals who have a need to find those conversations where they, not only the important conversations, the conversations that matter are happening, the ones that matter to you, and the ones that are also going to be most influential to the people that you care about. So to me, it's just fascinating. And the challenge of how to describe to people, what this can do for them is not insignificant either, because, marketers and customer support people and PR people, they are all now many of them just starting to figure out how do we operate online? How do we operate outside the boundaries of our corporate website or our support website or our Facebook page where we have a lot of control? And how do we go out into this big, bad, scary universe where we don't have control, where, we can't necessarily delete the negative comments. We don't have that power. And we have to actually engage in a dialogue with people. And to me, it's fascinating what you've done. And
well, thanks, Dave. I really appreciate that. But the way that you're describing that brings to mind the words of Diane Hinchcliffe, one of my favorite thinkers online, who once said in an interview on CMS Wire, he said the networked organization of the future recognizes that the lion's share of value exists outside their own walls, and they seek to find that value and bring it inside. And so there's definitely, a clear need to find customer service requests and complaints and watch out for threats outside. But there's also really big opportunities on the positive side to connect with people who are blazing new trails and discovering new market opportunities and building best practices that your company can go out and discover and leverage their knowledge, and we can create a networked sense of knowledge and value creation. So that I'm really excited about. And if I could make a contrast, so a lot of people may be familiar with the social listening type approach, where more and more companies are discovering that it's been around for a couple of years now, that you can subscribe to services that will alert you whenever someone says your name. So a lot of customer service organizations will use a social listening service to capture complaints or what have you. But typically a social listening based service will look for people who use a keyword, and then they'll tell you who's most popular in absolute terms, like who just has a whole lot of followers and a big audience, with little analysis of who that audience is. Now, Clout blazed a new trail and said, let's analyze the audience and see if those people have a significant audience as well, in order to determine how influential you are. And that made a lot of sense for a while, and I'm really glad that they blazed that trail. But the way that we do it, I think, is taking things to the next step, which says, do you have relevant audience and relevant followers? It doesn't matter, especially in B2B, and especially for research and knowledge discovery. It doesn't matter if you've got a million random followers or 100,000 followers you bought. What matters is whether really relevant people in your industry, are listening to you. Because if they are, then maybe you're the right person to listen to. So, and man, what thanks for that was my journalistic approach. I'd say I'm interested in a whole bunch of different topics. I can't read everything that everybody says on this topic. So tell me who the experts listen to, because I want to listen to those people as well. And then give me an automated system for when they say something that really spikes in their niche relevant community. And I want to monitor that across different sectors so I can scalably do journalism. And now we're taking that approach, bringing it to marketing. So that our customers, whether they're agencies or brands, can more efficiently monitor this big teaming conversation by knowing who the experts follow. And you guys, our data suggests too that this very conversation is a great example. Dave, you mentioned my past as an influential journalist. Our system didn't just find you as an influential person in some topic, but rather as one of the most very influential people in the world on visual thinking, right at the center of the network, at the top of the list. With everybody in this really important field of visual thinking listening to you and paying attention to you because you've earned their respect, because you've added so much value to the conversation. And that's the metric that Little Bird focuses on, not how many Kanye West and Amber Rose fans are following you or what have you, but how many visual thinking experts are. And Chris, likewise, you've been adding value and as in so many different ways for so many years. As the founder of the Social Media Club and beyond, all of us have been collaborating loosely, more or less, and working to build those connections. And those connections don't just make us valuable, but also give us access to value as connected nodes in that network as value flows through the network.
Well, we're very fortunate to all be part of a broader, as I think of it, global family, where we've earned trust online with each other before we even knew each other in person. And we've extended that through being able to share space together and meals and drinks and many other moments where we've had a chance to dive more deeply into these conversations and really learn from one another. In today's world, we're no longer standing on the shoulders of our forefathers. We're standing arm in arm with our peers. And it just makes the world more powerful and allows us to accelerate innovation and bring about the change to a better world that we're all hoping to create in business and in our personal lives. So I feel we're all very fortunate. But you started hitting on something I want to dive more deeply into. We spent the first 10 minutes or so talking about what I think are the two key foundations for entering into understanding and engaging your market better, which is actually the mindset required and the methods in which we approach it. and you started hitting on the metric a little bit, which is the third element I believe that's important. But I wanted to dive more in on that, because that's the one thing that I think, well, it's one of many things you do differently, but it's one thing that I think is especially powerful in the graphs that you produce compared to other tools that I've seen. So could you talk a little bit more about, what are you looking at relative to what is it that puts Dave in the center inside your network for visual thinking, or anybody else in the center of those networks? And in fact, further to that point, how you look at the fact that oftentimes there's three kind of areas in that network with three major influencers instead of just one.
Yep. Yeah, one or more. So Dave could be compliment. We could talk about Dave all day long, but maybe we should talk about Luis Suarez, who just joined the Blab chat.
Hey,
Luis is an incredible contributor to the discourse online around enterprise collaboration, knowledge management, communication, social networks, and what have you. And he came up. I mean, I've been following his work for many years, but he's a good example of another data point that emerges when we do that kind of what we call contextual segmentation, Chris. So Littlebird goes and maps out the connections between lots of different people participating in a conversation online, specifically on Twitter, because we're able to see who, just like Blab leverages the Twitter social graph, so does Littlebird. And we're instead of Blab lets you write out to your social graph on Twitter, and we're focused on reading in from your social graph or from other people's social graph. I'm able to look at all of your connections, whether I know you or not. So we're able to do that automatically and at scale. And so here's a good example from a customer, a product design perspective, really. So Littlebird is, in a really broad sense, a social business application. Not necessarily about internal collaboration, but the other side of social business, collaboration with the outside world, discovery of opportunities and people and value and knowledge. So when thinking about that approach, I might run a Littlebird report on social business. One of my primary Littlebird reports that I keep coming back to is a report on social business. But when we analyze the connections between all the different people, we find that there are certain clusters. There's some segments in that big community. And when I look at that, I look at one of those clusters as being primarily a group of people who anecdotally I might characterize as high volume self-promoters. And God bless them. But then I see another cluster of people that are people like Dion Hinchcliffe, Rachel Happ from Community Roundtable, Samir Patel over at SAP, and Luis Suarez, formerly of IBM. And that's the cluster right there that I am most inspired by. And by being able to segment that big social business conversation and figure out what the different subcommunities are, and to use that knowledge to really drill down and listen to their best thinking, their concerns, their needs, we can have our product roadmap informed by the state of that conversation. And just our knowledge of the different subcommunities by the lay of the land. And so our Littlebird customers do the same thing externally. We've got one big manufacturing customer, for example, that was entering into the space market, and they wanted to know, all right, who in space? What are the different subcommunities that are participating in the conversation? Because we want to inform our strategy around that. Or we've got other customers that pull in their social listening data, and they say, all right, there's people complaining about a product shortage, for example, or our brand. How do they segment? Let's analyze the connections between them to determine the subcommunities in order to figure out, all right, that's here's who's complaining. It's this kind of persona, it's these kinds of constituencies. Let's target this group for outreach and response as our first priority. And here are the most connected nodes in that little subcommunity. So by analyzing those connections and discovering some segmentation, you can really be more sophisticated than you might if you were just pulling in a raw list of people who've mentioned your name, for example, and sorting them by their total number of followers. They're complementary approaches, but we think that's the next stage.
If I may, so I want to get to a specific point here, and that is in regards to your number that you show relative to the number of insiders following. Or I'm sorry, I'm saying it the wrong way here. But I mean, we don't need to get into all the numbers and metrics that you're using in your algorithm, but I wanted to talk about that specific one. It's like how many other insiders as a part of this network are following.
Yep.
And I'll just say one of the ways that I use it, and I want to hear a little bit more about that specific metric and how that impacts things, but I also want to share one of the ways that I've used that is actually, I've used that to find out influencers, insiders, I should say, in the tool who I'm not yet following who are following me. And likewise, the ones who are, anyways, in the same way with other people. And so that exposes opportunities to create these new connections and to actually make those connections more solid. And as a result, amplify your own influence in the network by actually building those connections with those, other insiders, so to speak. So could you tell a little more about that insider metric and how other people might use that?
Yeah. So because we're focused on a contextually relevant influence, I sometimes describe it as a 9 out of 10 dentists recommend model. It's about don't tell me who in visual thinking, for example, or design thinking, or what have you, visual thinking. It has the biggest megaphone. That's interesting. But tell me who the other specialists and the experts and the people who really focus on that are listening to, and that's the core influence metric at Little Bird. If you run a Little Bird report on dentists, we're going to tell you the dentists that the other dentists listen to. For example, we literally did that when Jay Baer, for example, was going to go. He called me up one day and he said, "Marshall, I just got invited to speak." I don't think he'd mind me telling the story to the American Dental Association's national conference, and I need to figure out which dentists are really carry a lot of weight online among the other dentists. And I said, "Jay, you came to the right place. That's exactly what we measure." So if any of your viewers out there are looking for influential dentists, now, you never know. You never know where you're going to land, right? But instead, the point is, a specific, especially a B2B niche, you can discover all kinds of opportunities for credible people that you can connect with. And those connections are a great way for you to build your influence, but also to learn new things. And to participate in that cycle of discourse and value co-creation with the best people, and we also then monitor their conversations and bring you the hottest conversations that they're having. So we'll surface the best time to jump in there and read their stuff and say something about it. So it's all about focus and efficiency too. To really jump in quickly. And like you said, those emails that you send are one of my favorite things. You can now sign up for as many of them as you want if you're a Little Bird user. And we're trying to bridge the gap between a whole lot of thinking and work that you might have done manually that we're going to automate. And we're going to just squeeze it down, all those social observations like coal into a diamond, and say, all right, here's your diamond, go talk to this person in this conversation in order to learn and grow your own influence and social capital. Did that answer that question about in pure math forms? What you'll see is a list of people on the front page that says, we found 1,000 diamond miners, and the top one is followed on Twitter by 500 of her peers who are also in the diamond mining business or what have you. And if you want to go connect with her on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube, I'm sure she's got a hell of an Instagram channel, in the diamond or whatever. I ran a report on archaeologists just for fun last night and saw which. So we don't give people like a 1 to 100 rating. It's really about how many inbound connections have you got amongst your peers in that particular field.
Dave, do you have any question, or can I jump in with another one right now?
I do,
please.
But I'm interested in Marshall from a business case. What kind of things your Little Bird customers are doing, what the stuff is that they're finding most valuable in terms of what you mentioned manufacturer, the little mini case you gave of the manufacturer looking to enter a new market and wanting to know, okay, how do we even understand this and grasp the space market? What are the categories? You have a few others you could run us through, just like typical kinds of cases, because I think that for me that helps make it a lot more tangible about what would I do as a business person? How might I use this?
So probably the first thing that a lot of people use Little Bird for is to figure out who they should tell about an announcement or a new product or a marketing campaign, something they want to spread the word about. So they'll say, all right, we had one customer, for example, who was about to launch a product in the 3D printing space. And they said, we want to know which 3D printing experts do all the other 3D printing experts listen to and trust, and what are they talking about right now, so we can jump in and engage in those conversations. And thankfully, they were smart enough to start that 6 months before the product launch, so that come product launch time, they were able to say, all right, we're a known and trusted entity now. We've built some connections with a handful of these specific people, and now we're going to reach out to them and say, hey, 3D printing friend, we've been talking about your work and about the industry for months. Are you interested in hearing about what we're bringing to market? And people said, hell yeah, I'd love to hear what you're bringing to market. And we were able to catalog their connections to those influencers and then help them measure the growth of those connections. They were able to double the number of, they're already a really well-known industry player, and they were able to double their number of connections to thought leaders in that target market in like last 3 months leading up to product launch. So that's one thing. Another bucket that a lot of people fall into is around content creation or curation. So, these days it's a knowledge economy, and you got to be contributing in order to, and the smarter and the more regular and the more effective your content is, the better your chances of rising above the noise in an era of content overload. And so a lot of Little Bird customers will say, bring me the world's leading experts in my market and tell me what they're talking about so that I can reshare that content or use it to inform my own content creation and make sure that I'm speaking to the same issues, that I'm using the vocabulary, that I'm aware of the trends that the trailblazers are talking about right now, so I can be relevant, so that I can,
or I can hire them to write a white paper, right?
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that means effective content that's relevant and timely, which leads to web traffic and sales prospects and business growth.
So far, I've heard, entering a new market, launching a new product, content marketing. Those are all pretty much marketing use cases. Are you finding? Is there any areas other than marketing, or is it pretty much mostly marketing where people are finding value?
Well, these days, we're trying to push the envelope on influencer relations. At first,
it makes sense. Marketing makes a lot of sense.
That's where the bulk of things is going on right now. We've got some customers who are using it for recruiting, which I love. and some that are using, and where I'd love to see things go, and part of the reason why I'm excited about being a guest on this show is using influencer discovery and monitoring to inform company-wide strategy and product strategy. To say, tell me, make sure that I'm up to speed on the state of the art. So that I can, not make strategic and product decisions like a Yoko Local or whatever out wherever here in Portland, Oregon, for example. We're not in San Francisco, we're not in New York, but we want to know. That's an interesting way to look at it too, and so how they say that you can measure the growth of patents over time, or the incidence of patents. There's a correlation between patent incident and population density, or population size, because the more people are packed into a place and the more tightly packed they are, the more cross-pollination of ideas happens and the more innovation happens traditionally in like product development. And on some level, we're trying to give people access to the best of that kind of network density in the virtual social space.
Hey, so I want to go further on that point there relative to the product improvement behind it, Marshall. And you just did a new product release and love what you did, but I'm wondering, to what extent did you use Littlebird to help understand the needs of your market, or did you do more primary?
Well, it was really a combination. That was one of the tools in our toolkit, using Littlebird. For example,
Research.
We use Littlebird every day over here all the time. Hopefully, Chris will join us back here in just a moment, and maybe he can hear. So, Dave, maybe this is our chance to talk about Chris. So when we were doing that work, we, for example, went out and did interviews with and got product feedback from the most influential people in the world in our target market. So, we had phone calls, for example, with Matt Hines of Hines Marketing and Jill Rowley, formerly of Oracle and Salesforce, and people like that. And it was helpful to both know that those were the most influential people, so that we could get product knowledge from them. But on the flip side, it was also good to see them in context and to know they're not necessarily representative of everyone, because these are like super powered users, really ambitious people at the very top of the field. And so, understand their product feedback and they would even tell us this, in context, and have it set side by side with more mainstream customer interviews and in interviews with non-customers. And so it was a really important tool in the toolkit to do product research, but it was helpful context to make sure that we absorbed their feedback and advice smartly.
Yeah, so that would be an example, like you're saying, of using Littlebird as a strategy, like a kind of a helping you identify what's the best strategy for you.
Yeah, and we'll. There's so much conversation in our market all the time around marketing technology and content marketing and different stuff like that. How when you're thinking about a product or any kind of strategic thing, so much of our thinking is about taking the building blocks, largely of what we've read, for me, and I think for many others, and saying, well, I know that this is going on right now, and my horizons were expanded by that happening, and let's put it together here to have an analytical framework. What's the liminal thinking view on this, Dave, that there's reality. It's super rich, and there's a fraction of reality that you're able to absorb. And then based on that, you test some theory. You come up with some theories. You test those theories. That leads to beliefs. And then on top of that, I'm sorry if I'm stealing your thesis here, but and then on top of those beliefs, you end up taking action. But there's all kinds of layers of belief and theory and our limited capacity for observation standing in between us and real reality. And so one of the things that we're doing at Little Bird is trying to make that reality absorption as effective as possible by saying, we know you've only got so much bandwidth to hear about the conversations in the market and hear about the new trends and development. So we're going to feed your pipeline, your mental pipeline, with the most high quality, expert derived conversations and connections and what have you, so that you can have a really well-informed theory and then well-informed beliefs to make your product and strategic decisions on top of.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when you started talking about strategy. I think that's what's really interesting about that is you've got you're always going to be inside of your bubble of belief. You know, the way that you draw the boundaries around the marketplace that you're in. The classic, very obvious example is the way that hotels draw the line around the hospitality industry does not include organizations like Airbnb, and yet Airbnb and Couchsurfing and these other organizations are stealing market share. It's not within the boundaries of most auto manufacturers to think about the car as a service, and as you see in an organization like Uber or Zipcar, where they actually rental cars. But it will absolutely impact their industry, if not now, soon. Autonomous vehicles, until recently was not on the radar of a lot of auto manufacturers as anything to take really seriously. So you have these weak signals that are actually popping up all over the place, and you don't want to only get those signals once they've achieved a certain level of momentum, and strategically, it's often too late. And this is where many organizations and many industries, even whole industries, get blindsided. If you have a way to detect those weak signals, does not mean that you're necessarily going to be smart enough to pay attention to them. However, if you can figure out, let's say, in your industry, who are the bellwether type people who are looking out, who are futurists. They may be people that you're not necessarily taking seriously today. You could identify those people, and you could start saying, okay, let's at least take a look at these wacko theories that they're proposing and these things, and let's at least have them on our radar. Start paying attention to these things, so when we can actually start, maybe even having the opportunity to, recognize when certain types of services are scaling rapidly, and maybe early enough to buy that before they get so big they can buy us, kind of thing. So I think there's a lot of interesting opportunities there, and that's, I don't know if you would call what you're doing social listening. It sounds like you wouldn't, but
yeah, so I keep hearing people talk about social intelligence, and sometimes I think that's about your customer base, but sometimes it can be about the world. The autonomous vehicles example is a really interesting one. Now we're starting to see mainstream car companies. They're all getting in on that. They're thinking about the sharing economy and what do they call it, partial ownership or what have you. 2 years ago, I was talking to Jeremiah Ouyang when he left Altimeter in the social business space and started his new company, Crowd Companies, that's focused on sharing economy stuff. I was talking to him, and he was telling me, the car companies, they don't think of other car companies as their primary competition anymore. Now they think of Apple and Facebook and Spotify as their competition, and they're trying to think, once we're selling autonomous vehicles, what are the entertainment systems going to be playing in the back seat for our customers? And Now that seemed kind of crazy to me, but he was super connected. He still is super connected. He had credibility from people in that specific industry around the sharing economy stuff. And so smart people started listening to him, and the smartest brands came in, started participating with his company, and now are informing their marketing, their go-to-market, and their product strategy from the best practices that really connect innovators like him, are surfacing.
Well, here's where I start offering my own kind of blunt opinions, and here's a perfect example of a bubble. You've got the auto industry, auto manufacturers. The whole the fact that they're picking up these signals is one thing, and then the way that they interpret those signals is another thing. So, for example, because I've been there, I've been all the way through this with the phone business. The auto industry, if the auto manufacturers are now thinking of Google and Apple as their competitors, they're going to lose. Because absolutely, cars are going to run on Apple software, they're going to run on Google software. But the car makers, no way in hell will they be able to compete with Google and Apple on the software side. They are not, it's not in their DNA. So the fact that and what they think, and I was there when, I was working at Nokia as a consultant when this same stuff went down. They think because they have 20, 30%, 40% of the market share for automobiles, that's enough. It's not enough. The fact is, if you look at where Nokia is today, that's where the auto manufacturers are going to be if they don't start thinking more like a partner. Apple and Google and Microsoft, the software companies, they're definitely going to run the software in the car. It's not going to be Ford. You're not going to be listening to Ford tunes.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be going to Ford Maps or GM Maps or Mercedes Maps. No, you're still going to be using Apple Maps and Google Maps. I promise you that. And if you're in the auto manufacturing industry, you need to be thinking in those terms. What are we going to do? How are we going to operate in this world? How are we going to be successful in this market? So, what you're pointing out to me, Marshall, is that you got to be, not only do you got to be doing this, paying attention to these weak signals, but you got to be really careful on how you interpret them as well. And I bet you have thoughts about how do you find the people who help you do that also.
I sure do. Yeah. I think it's one thing to discover the canaries in the coal mine that will say, whoa, here comes a trend there's a weak signal. Here comes a trend. Maybe you should be participating in this conversation and talking about these kinds of issues. But when it comes to taking action with product and company strategy, there's a whole nother opportunity to say, bring me the people. People before the social web, when you were looking for someone to fill a need, like a strategic, building out a strategy or building out a product, you'd first look at your personal network, and then you'd weigh heavily perhaps someone's academic background and say, well, this person went to that school or this school, and that's the marker of social proof that means that they're the real deal. And now those aren't the only options anymore, because the same kind of consideration can be given looking at who a person's rubbing elbows with meaningfully out in this great public square of the social web. So I might, for example, take one person for my trend discovery and figure that out by looking at their connections and their network, and then I might say, I think we could use some visual thinking applied to our considered response to this trend. And who gets the call? It's Dave and X-Plane that has all of the connections and that you thus know is so credible. And now there's signals online on the social web to demonstrate that. And that means you can jump in with confidence and speed to make those smart connections if you're looking at the networks. And so that's what we're focused on is helping companies look at the networks to see trends emerging, to know who to be connecting with, to know where to go and participate in conversations, to grow their own visibility, their own traffic and business, but then also to find the people to help solve their problems and respond to those trends.
Hey, Marshall, I wanted to get into one question we had before from Bob King before we start running out of time. And then I've got one other question I want to close with as we're closing to the top of the hour. But Bob, Sub-Bob on Twitter, was asking earlier about what your thoughts were on kind of the differences or the different approaches between the content to eyes or the traffic to site strategy, and a very subtle differentiation between the two. But I believe it really speaks to the approach and the mindset, but there is some tactical difference as well. And are you familiar with that debate or that discussion?
I don't know that I am. No, I could extrapolate, and I think what that connects to, in my experience and in my mind, is that we have found that marketing campaigns that are informed by and leverage trusted, influential people drive more qualified traffic back to websites because of the relevance of the content and the relevance, the contextual relevance of the influencers that you're engaged with. And so there's an opportunity to increase quantity of website traffic by increasing quality of content.
Excellent.
through contextual relevance.
That's excellent. And still to that point here, it's like the difference between management speak and human speak in many cases. It's like a lot of times when we're in a planning session talking about this, we'll talk about the audience, but I would never talk to you as my audience. I'd talk to you as Marshall. We talk human to human and really focus on that human component of it in the interpersonal space. But occasionally you do have to step into that broader management discussion. So I think the idea of driving more traffic to your site is a great idea. But if that's your metric, then perhaps you're getting the wrong outcomes as a result because you're not getting the right people. But if you're connecting the people behind the eyes with content that is meaningful to them and rich, that's how you have a chance to earn greater loyalty and trust and start building a relationship where maybe they're going to be coming back more often or tuning into you. And that leads to that site strategy behind that. So really interesting sort of subtle difference inside of that. And I haven't read all the discussion, but somebody did mention it to me about a week ago. So I guess it's something that's coming up. And I want to come back to you and actually Little Bird for a minute here and back to the broader question about the use of your product for helping you understand and engage your market and your customers around it. And I was wondering if you actually used your product to see who was talking the most about Little Bird and whether or not that matched closely with what you perceived to be like the most active or most influential people on the conversation about your company outside of yourself and, kind of your core team.
Well, sort of. The way that, again, that intersects with our experience, I'd say, is that we've got a Slack channel set up, for example, that pulls in Twitter search results anytime someone mentions our name. And so when someone mentions our name publicly, we get a notification about that. And one of the things that we'll do is before going out and engaging with someone, we will open up a couple of Little Bird reports and see that person in context. We'll say, is this person, are they focused on like enterprise, for example? Do they have connections in marketing technology? We've got a network spun up of our competitors. Do they have deep relationships with any of our competitors? Are they really savvy or are they not very savvy about our industry, for example? And all of that will inform the way that we reach out and engage with folks. We also have a regular marketing cadence where our head of marketing, Julie Zisman, identifies a set of targets to proactively engage with. She's got about 5 people at a time that she identifies using Little Bird, and then she monitors them using Little Bird for their conversations to see when the best opportunities to connect with them are. And then she uses Little Bird to take note when a connection has been established. And then once we've got connections with those, then she goes back to the well, and the system says, here's some new people that are really influential in your target market that you should target to build relationships with.
Cool. Well, I do like that you really always have to understand who you're talking to. And I think all too often people don't take that pause and that breath. They see somebody mention their name and they just reply and answer their question without understanding who they're really talking to. And that's one of the dangers, I think, of this instant real-time environment, is that we start getting into the rapidness of it all without actually pausing to reflect and actually seeing the other person and understanding who they are, so you can reply in context with an understanding of maybe what the underlying issue or question or interest might be, so you can actually produce a richer answer. And as a result of that, decrease the number of volleys back and forth and get them the answer or get them a reply quicker, which is actually, really honoring them and their time in many ways. So that's very, very, very cool. And I'm going to get on the other point really quick as a last thought here, because while you guys were talking about trending and understanding it, this comes back to our pre-show conversation about language. Not only identifying like that autonomous vehicles is an upcoming thread among influencers in the automotive market, and trying to identify emerging keywords or phrases coming out of influencer networks that have been previously identified. But also the clustering of other language that is used in terms of, how have you been looking at or considering that sort of approach to say, hey, Chris, you're following customer experience as one of your core topics and networks that you're interested in. Did you know that people are also talking about, user experience? That's an easy one. But do you know that they're talking about these other things? So we might either look at other networks or actually combine those key phrases together. So how are you approaching that?
In this new version of Little Bird, that's right out of the box. And the way that we're doing it is when you map out a network and we do the contextual segmentation and we say, it looks like there's a cluster of people here and a cluster of people over there. And here's who the leaders are in those different communities. We'll also tell you what hashtags they're using. And so that makes it real easy to give a click to one of those and then see the whole conversation around that hashtag. I was just looking at a market that I know fairly well the other day, and there was a sub-community that was using a really interesting hashtag I'd never seen before. Opened it up, and all of a sudden there was this whole new greenfield of opportunities, that a big channel of conversation that I didn't even know existed, that was sourced from influencers and discovered by analysis of them as a group and a group of groups. So and then you can grab that language and create a new Little Bird report out of that as well. One of the other things that we do is now allow you to take two different networks that you've mapped. So you might say, show me, build one network of all of the people who are using a keyword, like maybe the customer experience phrase, map them out, and then tell me, maybe you've got a campaign coming up in medical IT, or you're consulting for a medical devices company, or an autonomous vehicles company, or something like that. We now let you map out a second network on those kinds of topics, and then look to see what the intersection is between them. So you can say, tell me the customer experience thought leaders who are most influential in the world of autonomous vehicles, or who are most interested in autonomous vehicles. So if you discover new concepts or keywords, you can say, tell me who amongst the thought leaders I know is most interested in that new concept, because they're following a bunch of the thought leaders of that concept too. And those are the people I'm going to go connect with. So lots of different ways you can research and slice and dice and drill down if you're that type of person. And if you've been listening to this podcast all the way through here to the an hour in, I bet you're a deep thinker ready to roll up your sleeves and do some data mining and some work with some power tools. So we make that easier than ever.
Yeah, and Marshall, just tell those people and let people on the show know, obviously it's not a free for everyone sort of product with this sort of capabilities in it. You don't need to get into the pricing necessarily, but you do free trials. How is that set up so that people can take a look at it?
It's a business-focused technology. We've got a team of people that we've hired here who like to eat and pay their mortgage. So I've tried taking accolades and exposure down to the grocery store and trading it for food, and that doesn't work. So it is a business-focused technology, but there is a trial that you can come in. I'm not sure how long it is right now, but it's long enough to be wowed.
Well, now that you're evangelist instead of CEO,
yeah, come on down and give it a shot. And we would love to talk to any of your listeners or viewers about your current business challenges, no matter what they are, whether they're in marketing, go-to-market, content marketing, or strategy and product stuff. There's a whole network of knowledge and value out there that we'd love to help people tap into.
We got one last question here from What No Website, which presumably is a company that builds websites. I would hope that would be what they do. Or maybe it's just kind of an ironic thing and he's a hipster with a really nice mustache. But how do you guys build this network? That's within Little Bird itself. That's what we were talking about. I just shared the link over there inside the chat room. It's getlittlebird.com. And you can just go to that link and sign up for a free trial and go ahead and see how that works around key phrase or set of words that you're interested in and following and understanding and engaging your market. And if you came in late, I highly recommend you listen to the replay because a lot of insights shared relative to how to actually make the most of it, how to take the right mindset and approach to it, and a lot of interesting methodologies from different customer use case studies, some of the ways that I've used it, the ways that Marshall uses it for Little Bird themselves, and some of their the leading clients, if you will, or customers that they have. Dave, any closing thoughts here? You got your liminal thinking out by practice in this one, as opposed to by expressing what that means. But any other thoughts in this relative to why what Marshall's doing is so interesting to you and liminal thinking and that intersection?
I do have one final thought, and I'm a bit afraid that I'm preaching to the choir because the people who need to hear this are probably not on this podcast. But the final thought I have comes from a guy named Steve Blank, who wrote a few books about entrepreneurship and startup and innovation. And the bottom line is that there are no facts inside the building, and a lot of marketing and promotion and PR and brand and product launch decisions, unfortunately, still get made by internal conversations. They get made without sufficient evidence. They get made without being based on really good information in the marketplace and in the world. And what Marshall has created here is a tool that allows people to, without leaving the building, collect those facts and bring them into the building. So it gives people, it's a powerful tool for helping to bring that information inside and help inform those decisions about what's the next product we're going to launch, what is the next service, how do we innovate on our product, how do we create the next iteration of whatever we need to be as an organization, how do we think 3, 4, 5, 10 years out. That stuff, and there's a lot of research that gets done, but a lot of the research is not sufficient. I think where you get the real context and what it means and why it matters is in the conversations, not in the market research. And that's what's missing in a lot of those internal strategic conversations. And I think this is a really powerful tool for that. And I'm excited about it.
Oh, thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate you guys having me on the show. I hope that your viewers and listeners will come and meet our team online. They've got lots of experience helping companies and people tap into this new era of networked attention and learning and engagement and marketing.
Awesome. Well, we're really for your time today, and it's great to have a chance to talk to you more about what you're doing and actually learn a little bit more myself, which is what I try to do, learn a bit more every day. When we get to hang out with cool and smart people like Dave and Marshall, I'm fortunate to do that. And thankfully, we're all living in an online world where each of you in the audience and in my friends and in our broader networks out there get a chance to actually meet and interact with these folks too. So definitely some big experts in the field, and really grateful to have you both here on CXD Now today. Again, thanks to Explain and Dave Gray and Get Littlebird and Marshall Kirkpatrick for joining me. And we'll look forward to seeing you again in the next week or two on the next show, and talk to you all very soon. Thank you for joining.